demand keeps on going up, the cost of electricity would also keep on coming down.
Are we going to expect more load shedding since the peak season is yet to come?
That's how Pakistan got hit by the US-Iran conflict. So LNG was
Cut off.
We didn't have any LNG. In the next 8 to 10 years, Pakistan is expected to be just about 3 or 4% dependent on imported fuel for our power sector generation. Pakistan has been through a solar revolution in the past many years.
You're watching Pakistan TV Digital, and in an exclusive interview today, I'm joined by the Minister for Energy, Sardar Awais Leghari. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
It's a pleasure being here.
Congratulations on the latest award, Hilal Imtiaz.
Yeah, it was an honor for us at the Power Division, and I hope we're not complacent and we continue the pace at which we have been trying to bring in reforms in the future also.
Definitely looking forward to that. So to begin with, whenever there's a regional or of course a global conflict, energy sector is hit hard. And that has been happening lately to Pakistan specifically in terms of the Iran war, LNG disruptions and generally, energy supplies disruptions. What is your ministry doing to protect the consumers from that kind of burden?
Well, the Iran war has been an eye-opener for all of us here in Pakistan. But luckily, and we were quite fortunate that Pakistan's power sector has had a mere 26% dependence on foreign and imported fuels. So this dependence has kept us quite protected from the kind of scale at which the power sector would have been impacted. But still, the LNG and the gas supplies within Pakistan coming in from the Middle East have been quite disruptive. And we expect that in the future we do change our strategy and have more of a diversified form of fuel coming in until we are completely dependent on our own. In the next 8 to 10 years, Pakistan is expected to be just about 3 or 4% dependent on imported fuel for our power sector generation. We are at 76% now, and by the year, inshallah, we'll be growing to that 96% benchmark, which would really put Pakistan in a position where it would not matter and any disruptions globally would not quite impact the consumers of our country.
That brings me to my next question. What are some of the alternative options? So, for example, if I were to divert you to solar specifically, that is definitely a huge sector in Pakistan. But at the same time, there are some missing incentives people notice. What is your ministry doing to explore that option?
Pakistan has been through a solar revolution in the past many years, and that has been because of the investments that the people have made in the solar generation part, especially in the distributed generation part. We plan to continue the incentives we had given earlier on, at least for the existing consumers, and for the new consumers, the payback periods that we have offered for their investments are quite attractive for them to continue on the same path for the future. The other life-saving part for our power sector has been the investments we are making and we have made in the hydel sector. So in the next 8 to 10 years, we are expected to add on another 10,000 megawatts in hydel energy and about 1,500 megawatts in nuclear, and about 17,000 megawatts more is expected to be added on in the renewable sector within the next 8 years. That puts Pakistan in a position where we will be safeguarded from any such shocks in the future.
What is the circular debt situation of the energy sector of Pakistan?
We were at about 2,400 billion rupees when the government came in about 2 years ago. We stand at about 1,600 billion today. So there's been a reduction of circular debt of over close to 800 billion rupees. This we plan to get off our books in the next 3 to 4 years. So circular debt should vanish by the end of the term of this government, inshallah.
There's a lot of news going on about subsidy reforms, and some have also reported that it is going to burden the consumer, of course, or the ministry is going to remove the subsidy at all. Is this true? If so, what is the reason behind it?
I think it's going to ease off the burden on the consumers in the future. What's happening today is that we've increased the number of consumers who are receiving subsidies from 8.5 to 9 million to over 22 million as we speak. Now, these people are all people who consume electricity less than 200 units, but they're not necessarily the ones who actually deserve that subsidy. How much is the subsidy? It ranges between 65% of a discount to over 85%. The 50 unit people get about 85% subsidy, the 200 unit ones get about 65% of the subsidy. Who bears the burden of these consumers and the discounts they get? There's a total of 500 plus billion rupees in subsidies that goes to these 22 million consumers. We have a total of 33 million consumers. So the 22 million consumers get a subsidy of 500 plus billion rupees. The Ministry of Finance and the government bears the burden of 250 billion out of those. The rest of the 272 billion rupees of a burden comes on to the rest of the consumers. So the middle classes, the low middle classes, the upper middle classes, the professionals, the salaried class, they are bearing the burden of over 250 billion rupees a year. That's why the cost of electricity over 200 units is a lot more than what it should be. So we are going to try to identify in the next year or so who is the actual the deserving customer on the grid who deserves that subsidy. So whoever are the actual deserving ones, we are going to identify those, link their meters with the ID cards, not of the owners of the meters, but the users of the meters, and get them to register in our BISP record. So whoever falls in that income level or whoever's family falls in that income level, which is the lowest quintile of the consumers of Pakistan, will automatically continue to get that subsidy. Whoever does not will have to pay the price according to the other slabs and will not be discounted. So all this burden that is reduced won't be just eaten up by the finance ministry or our exchequer. It would actually be passed on as an advantage to people over the 200 unit slab. So anyone who's getting electricity or consuming electricity more than 200 units and up to 700 units, they'll be the beneficiaries in terms of reduction of the cross subsidy that they pay for the lowest end consumers. So I think that would really increase the consumption of electricity, that would reduce the unnecessary burden, and that would also bring into place a fair environment where only the deserving get it. I'll just give you an example, and this is worth explaining. So if I am a user of, say, 700 units in a month, I invest about $1 million, $1.5 million rupees into my solar generation system at home. I reduce the consumption from 700 to below 200 units. That does not make me a poor person, or that does not translate into the fact that I deserve subsidy. So I've reduced my consumption to below 200 units, and whatever I'm consuming now on the grid, I get a further discount of 65%. That is what is not fair. That is what needs to change. That is where we need to direct our subsidies towards the poorest of this country and people who actually deserve it.
Because you have often also been seen quoting that in terms of energy generation, generation is not just the issue in Pakistan, governance and theft is, and you have actively been working for that. So I think related to that in the news again, there's also a lot of talk about energy sector reforms. But how do those reforms translate for, let's say, industrialists or household consumers?
The industrialists, we've gotten them rid of the cross-subsidy burden in the past 2 years. It was the Prime Minister's wish, and we did that. It was a very healthy, economically very healthy thing to do. So the consumption of industrial users has gone up now. There's been a reduction of about 16 rupees per unit in the tariff for industrial users. It's come down from, say, about 17, 18 cents per kilowatt hour to close to 12 cents per kilowatt hour. That translates into a 16 rupees per unit reduction. The household consumers have, on an average, their cost of electricity has gone down by about 8 to 9 rupees per unit. So in the past few years, we have seen a clear trend of the price of power, of the demand of power actually going down by over 8% every year. This year, in the past 9 months, we've seen a 6 to 7% increase in demand. And that has been there because of the reduced cost of electricity. So we're expecting that in the future, as the demand keeps on going up, the cost of electricity would also keep on coming down. So we are encouraging the industry and the agriculture sectors to use more power and to do it in a healthy manner. And for that, we are also trying to introduce, and we are right now forming new tariffs that could be optionally used or chosen by consumers for them to start using electricity at a much lower cost at different times of the day. So right now you only have peak and off-peak hours, but then we'll have electricity being provided in the solar hours of the day, which will be much less. So it costs us about 6.5 rupees a unit to produce electricity in the solar hours. So we are going to give option to people to improve their consumption and to make it more cost effective by opting into these kinds of optional tariffs, just like the ones you have for phone systems. So you have the ability to use one package or the other. So we are planning to introduce that after IMF's approval.
Right. And you know, load shedding is a unique concept for anyone living outside Pakistan, mostly in the West. A few weeks ago, the Prime Minister was generous enough to announce that yes, there will be load shedding, but to maximum 2.5 hours. Unfortunately, in some places of the country, it went up to 6 hours or even more. And then all of a sudden it reduced. So what is happening? Are we going to expect more load shedding since the peak season is yet to come?
The 2.5 hours and the 7 hours and the 6 hours that we experienced between 13th and the 28th of April, that was because of lack of LNG supply coming in from Iran. So that's how Pakistan got hit by the US-Iran conflict. And the rest of it, most of it was because of lower hydel power generation. So our hydel power, the basic principle is, and the law is, and the principle is, that however much the provinces require for irrigation, that is the amount that gets released from the dams. So your hydel generation basically depends on the demand of irrigation water in the provinces. So at that point in time, because of the rains and all that, the demand for water for irrigation purpose was much less. And that's why we were down to 1,000 megawatts. Right now, as we speak, the hydel generation is over about 6.5 to 7,000 megawatts. So that was one big dent that was caused in those particular days. But we would have been able to complement that and be able to fill that gap with gas power. Mm-hmm. At that point in time, there was no LNG. So LNG was
cut off.
We didn't have any LNG. And that's why we had to bear the brunt of load shedding, but now it's gone. But there is still load shedding happening in our country, but that's only on 3,000 of the 14,000 feeders that we have. So 11,000 feeders is no load shedding right now.
Right.
3,000, yes, we do economic load shedding, which is to keep the losses contained to a certain level. If we do not do that, and these are all feeders where there's very high electricity theft taking place, and that they have to bear the brunt of the theft that's taking place. That also is an issue. There are people on those entire feeders who are good, and who are good paymasters and who pay you whatever you billed for. Why should they be bothered because of the follies of the others? But that happens. And now we are trying to bring in technology where at the transformer level, we can switch off a community of a particular transformer that's not paying us well enough and that's involved in theft. So the other users on that feeder will not be affected. We're planning to have this implemented within the next year, year and a half, and there'll be an end to economic load shedding at the end of a year, year and a half at the feeder level, and we'll go down at the transformer level. Hence, making those particular communities more aware of the fact that they need to put themselves in order if they want to avoid load shedding.
Right, and going into the peak summer season, of course, more demand and more expected maybe load shedding. Are our current installed capacity, are we, ready to face that?
Oh yes,
Okay.
we are ready to provide the country with as much power as they demand, which usually goes up to 29,000 megawatts in the peak hours in the month of, say, July or August. And we have enough power to be able to provide to the people. So because of more demand, there will be no load shedding. And we are expecting the summers to be as smooth as they always have been. You'll keep hearing about it in the media, by the way, that there is load shedding. But that is more, people get more vocal in the hotter months of the year. So it's the same economic load shedding that's happening throughout the year in those particular areas. But since it's hotter and since there are drinking water issues and the heat waves and all that, so you get to feel it more in the summers than you do in the winters. And we are constantly trying to upgrade the national grid so that our transmission constraints are not there and all. But those are long-term projects varying anywhere between a year to about 3 years. We have already embarked upon that, but our public sector development program and the reduction in resources with the federal government vis-a-vis the provincial government and all this talk of the NFC award and the provinces taking more of a share of the resources, I think a readjustment in that would really help us direct more resources towards areas that much require them, including the national grid.
So more transmission lines in
Yeah, but we are
future.
expected to bring in the private sector on battery storage systems. That's going to be the new wave. Not just at the consumer level, where you will see many people in many households now invest into battery systems and avoid the more expensive part of power in the evening, store power in the morning instead of giving it back to the grid through net metering systems, and utilize the same power in the evening part of the whole day 24 hours. And we are also expecting to invest a lot with public-private partnership effort into utility scale battery energy storage systems that will further stabilize the grid and be able to absorb and take in more power coming in from the distributed generation systems.
Right. Thank you so much for your time,
Thank
Minister.
you. It's been a pleasure.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.